Her high school sweetheart and ex, the Korean Mafia boss, is her new boss. Now, he wants her back. After discovering her boyfriend Rex cheating with coworker Ashley, Jennifer Hart abandoned her old life for a fresh start. She secured a marketing role at High Sites Global and found an affordable apartment. Her first few months were good and successful, but something confused her. CEO Ju-won Park was never around, even though his presence was felt everywhere in the company. Her colleagues said he liked to delegate work and traveled often. Jennifer accepted their explanation. Still, something didn't feel right. Her instincts told her that Ju-won was avoiding something or someone. She didn't know how true that feeling was. She also didn't know that her extraordinary luck was not a coincidence at all. The email came on a Wednesday morning, marked high priority. Welcome once again, my amazing viewers. Thank you for watching. And don't forget to comment below where you're watching from. Mandatory all-staff meeting. Innovation Initiative. Thursday, 10 a.m. Main conference room CEO, Ju-won Park, will be in attendance. Jennifer's stomach tightened as she read the message. Finally, she'd meet the elusive CEO. She spent extra time that evening preparing her portion of the presentation, refining her slides on the new social media strategy her team had developed. She wanted to make a good impression. She arrived early Thursday morning, her portfolio tucked under her arm, her heart beating with nervous anticipation. The conference room gradually filled with colleagues, all buzzing with curiosity about finally seeing their CEO in person. At exactly 10 o'clock, the door opened, and Jennifer's entire world tilted on its axis. Ju-won Park walked into the room with the quiet confidence of someone who owned not just the company, but the very air around him. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell perfectly across his forehead and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Jennifer's monthly rent, and when he moved, every person in the room instinctively straightened in their chairs. Jennifer knew that walk. She knew the way his jaw tightened when he was thinking. She knew the small scar above his right eyebrow from a skateboarding accident when he was 16. She knew him because she had loved him. Ju-won Park now, her first love, her high school sweetheart, the boy who had broken her heart over a crackling phone line 6 years ago, was standing at the head of the conference table, opening his laptop as if the last 6 years had never happened. Jennifer's hands went cold. Her ears rang. For a moment, she forgot how to breathe. Their eyes met across the room and time fractured. She saw recognition flash in his eyes, a brief widening, a subtle catch in his movement. But then, almost immediately, his expression smoothed into professional neutrality. He looked away, addressing the room as if she were just another employee. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for making time for this meeting. We're here to discuss the innovation initiative that will define High Sites Global's trajectory for the next 5 years. His voice was deeper than she remembered, polished with authority, but underneath it all, she could still hear echoes of the boy who used to read her poetry in his car after school. Jennifer barely registered the rest of the meeting. She delivered her presentation on autopilot, her voice steady even as her mind reeled. She showed her slides, answered questions, received nods of approval from the department heads. The entire time, she could feel Ju-won's gaze on her, or perhaps she was imagining it. She couldn't tell anymore. When the meeting finally ended, Jennifer gathered her things with trembling hands and walked out as quickly as she could without running. Jennifer made it to her car before the panic truly hit. She gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, her breathing shallow. Ju-won, after all these years, after all the pain, after finally starting to move on. The pieces began clicking into place with sickening clarity. The job offer that had seemed too perfect, the apartment with impossibly low rent, the CEO who was never around, who had conspicuously avoided every situation where they might have met. He had orchestrated this, all of it. Ju-won hadn't just hired her, he had hunted her. He had researched where she was, what she was doing, and then he'd created a trap lined with velvet, a golden cage designed to bring her back into his orbit. The realization should have made her furious. It should have sent her marching back into that building to throw her resignation in his perfect, lying face. Instead, she sat in her car and cried. Not because she was angry, though she was. Not because felt manipulated, though she did. But because seeing him again had ripped open wounds she'd thought were healed. The pain of that phone call 6 years ago came flooding back. His voice, distant and cold, saying he was leaving, that they were over, that he was sorry, but it was for the best. No explanation, no closure, just gone. Jennifer had spent months trying to understand what she'd done wrong. Had she been too clingy, not supportive enough? Had he met someone else? The questions had eaten at her, stealing sleep, destroying her confidence, until finally she'd forced herself to stop asking. She'd boxed up the pain and buried it deep. Now Ju-won had dug it all back up. That night, Jennifer sat at her kitchen table with a glass of wine and her laptop, staring at a blank document titled Resignation Letter. Her cursor blinked accusingly. She couldn't work for him. She couldn't see him every day, couldn't pretend he was just her boss, couldn't separate the professional from the devastatingly personal. But quitting felt like running again, and she was so tired of running. The email arrived at 8:47 the next morning. From Ju-won Park to Jennifer Hart, subject meeting request. Please come to my office at 9 a.m. No pleasantries, no explanation, just a command. Jennifer stared at her screen, her heart hammering. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to let him wait, to make him feel even a fraction of the uncertainty he'd made her feel. But professionalism won out. Whatever Ju-won was to her personally, he was still her CEO, for now. At 8:59, she stood outside his office, smoothing down her gray pencil skirt and checking her reflection in the window. Professional, composed, unaffected, all lies, but necessary ones. She knocked. Come in. Ju-won's office was exactly what she'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture in shades of black and chrome, abstract art on the walls that probably cost more than most people's cars. He sat behind a massive desk, looking every inch the powerful executive. But when he looked up at her, Jennifer saw something flicker in his eyes, something vulnerable and quickly hidden. Ms. Hart, please sit down. Ms. Hart, not Jen, not Jennifer. The formality was a knife between her ribs. I prefer to stand, Mr. Park. His jaw tightened. As you wish. He stood as well, walking around the desk to lean against it, arms crossed. I wanted to inform you that you'll be accompanying me to Los Angeles next week. There's a major industry convention, and I need someone from our marketing team who has experience working in that market. Jennifer's mind raced. Why me? I've only been with the company for a few months. Surely someone with more seniority. Why you? Ju-won's tone was cool, professional, but his eyes held storms. Because you lived and worked in L.A. before coming here. Your knowledge of that market could be invaluable to securing the partnerships we're pursuing. It was a reasonable explanation, too reasonable. I see, Jennifer kept her voice neutral. And when exactly is this trip? We leave Monday morning. I'll have my assistant send you the itinerary. He paused, and something in his expression softened almost imperceptibly. This is a significant opportunity, Ms. Hart. The convention attracts every major player in our industry. The networking alone is worth the trip. Jennifer wanted to scream at him. She wanted to demand why he was doing this, why he'd brought her here, why he was acting like they were strangers when he knew. He knew what they'd been to each other. Instead, she said, I understand. Will that be all? Yes, that's all. Jennifer turned to leave, her hand on the doorknob when his voice stopped her. Jennifer, her real name. Finally. She didn't turn around. It's Mrs. Hart, Mr. Park. The silence behind her was deafening. The convention center in downtown Los Angeles buzzed with energy. Hundreds of tech industry professionals networking, making deals, showcasing innovations. Jennifer had attended events like this before, but never as a representative of such a prominent company. Never standing beside Ju-won Park. They'd maintained careful distance during the flight and the check-in at the hotel. Juwan had arranged separate rooms naturally, though Jennifer noticed they were both on the top floor. His penthouse suite was at the end of the hall. Her room, while luxurious, was comparatively modest. The first day of the convention passed in a whirlwind of presentations and meetings. Juwan was in his element, commanding every room he entered, closing deals with handshakes and that devastating smile Jennifer remembered too well. She played her part professionally, contributing insights about the Los Angeles market, making connections with potential clients. They barely spoke to each other directly, communicating through glances and professional courtesy. It was almost bearable, until she saw Rex. He appeared near the end of the second day, emerging from a crowd of convention attendees like a ghost from her past. But he wasn't alone. Ashley, her former co-worker, the woman he'd cheated with, clung to his arm, laughing too loudly at something he'd said. Jennifer's stomach turned to ice. Rex's company, Gentalk, was apparently one of the convention's major sponsors. Of course they were. Of course he'd be here. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. She tried to disappear into the crowd, to make herself invisible, but Rex had always had an uncanny ability to find her. She felt his attention before she saw him moving toward her, that smug smile she'd once found charming, now making her skin crawl. "Jenny. Wow, I can't believe it's you." She turned, forcing her expression into polite neutrality. "Hello, Rex?" He looked good, annoyingly. So, same perfectly styled hair, same expensive suit, same confident swagger that had initially attracted her. Ashley hung back slightly, her expression calculating. "I had no idea you were working for High Sights Global now. That's a pretty big step up from your last position." His tone suggested it was more luck than merit. "I'm quite happy with my career trajectory, thank you." Of course, of course." Rex moved closer, his hand reaching out as if to touch her arm. "Listen, I know things ended badly between us, but I think we're both mature enough to—" He never finished the sentence. A hand, large, warm, possessive, wrapped around Jennifer's own. She knew that touch, knew the calluses on his palm, knew the exact temperature of his skin. Juwan appeared beside her as if he'd materialized from thin air, his fingers interlaced with hers in a grip that was both protective and proprietary. Rex's eyes widened slightly, his gaze dropping to their joined hands and then rising to Juwan's face. "And you are?" Juwan's voice was pleasant, but there was steel underneath. Rex recovered quickly, extending his free hand. "Rex Donovan, I'm the marketing director at Gentalk, and I'm—" He glanced at Jennifer with that familiar smugness. "I'm Jenny's ex." "And you are?" Juwan's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Juwan Park, CEO of High Sights Global." His thumb traced a small circle on the back of Jennifer's hand. "And I'm her boyfriend." The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Jennifer's head snapped toward Juwan, her eyes wide with shock, but his expression remained perfectly composed, perfectly convincing. To anyone watching, they looked like an established couple, comfortable with each other, united. Rex's smug expression faltered. "Boyfriend. Right. Well." He recovered with forced cheerfulness. "That's great, really great. We should all get drinks sometime." "We're quite busy, actually," Juwan interrupted, smoothly. "But it was interesting to meet you. Enjoy the rest of the convention." It was a dismissal, pure and simple, and before Rex could respond, Juwan was guiding Jennifer away, his hand never leaving hers, his body angled protectively as they moved through the crowd. Jennifer's mind was spinning too fast to form coherent thoughts. Her hand felt like it was on fire where Juwan touched it. Her heart was racing. Around them, the convention continued, oblivious to the small drama that had just unfolded. They didn't speak. Not when they collected their things, not during the elevator ride to the top floor, not when Juwan unlocked the door to his penthouse and gestured for her to enter. The silence between them was so profound, so loaded with unspoken words, that Jennifer could hear her own pulse thundering in her ears. The penthouse was stunning, all modern luxury with panoramic views of the Los Angeles skyline glittering against the darkening sky. But Jennifer barely noticed. She stood in the middle of the living room, arms wrapped around herself, still processing what had just happened. "Would you like something to drink?" Juwan's voice came from behind her, carefully neutral. "No, thank you." More silence. Jennifer could feel him watching her, could sense the weight of everything they weren't saying filling the space between them. "You should get some rest," he finally said. "It's been a long day. Your room is down the hall, second door on the left." "Why did you do that?" The words escaped before she could stop them. "Do what?" "You know what?" She turned to face him. "The boyfriend thing, with Rex." Juwan's expression was unreadable. "He was making you uncomfortable. I intervened by claiming to be my boyfriend. It was the most efficient solution to the situation." His tone was so maddeningly professional, so carefully controlled, that something inside Jennifer snapped. Efficient. Right. Just like hiring me was efficient, just like buying my apartment building and setting my rent artificially low was efficient. She saw the flicker of surprise in his eyes and pressed on. "Oh yes, I figured it out. Did you really think I wouldn't? How long did you plan this, Juwan? How long have you been pulling strings in my life?" He said nothing, which was answer enough. "You had no right." Her voice shook with a mixture of anger and something more complicated. "You ended things. You walked away. You don't get to just manipulate me back into your life because you've decided you want me here." "I know." His voice was quiet. "Then why?" The question came out broken. "Why would you do this?" Juwan ran a hand through his hair, the first crack in his composed facade. "Because I'm selfish. Because I never stopped." He stopped himself, jaw clenching. "Get some rest, Jennifer. We can maintain professional distance for the remainder of the trip." He was retreating, both physically and emotionally, turning toward what she assumed was the master bedroom. "That's it? That's all you're going to say?" He paused, his back to her. "What would you like me to say?" "I'd like you to explain why you broke my heart." Her voice was barely a whisper now. "I'd like you to tell me why you called me one random Tuesday 6 years ago and ended everything without even giving me a reason. I'd like to know what I did wrong." Juwan's shoulders rose and fell with a deep breath. When he turned back, his carefully constructed walls were crumbling, revealing something raw underneath. "You did nothing wrong. You were perfect. You were—" He shook his head. "You deserved an explanation 6 years ago, and you deserve one now. But it's late, and this conversation deserves more than whatever fragments I can give you tonight." It wasn't enough, but it was more than she'd ever gotten before. Jennifer nodded slowly. "Fine. Tomorrow, then." "Tomorrow," he agreed. Jennifer lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying the day's events in an endless loop. Rex's face when Juwan claimed her, the weight of Juwan's hand in hers, the way her traitorous heart had leapt at being called his girlfriend, even though it was a lie told for an audience. She'd been doing so well, moving on, building a new life, healing from the dual betrayals of Rex's infidelity and Juwan's abandonment. And now, here she was, right back in the emotional chaos she'd worked so hard to escape. Around 2 a.m, thirst drove her out of bed. She pulled on the hotel robe, padding silently down the darkened hallway toward the kitchen. Light spilled from the kitchen doorway. When she entered, she found Juwan standing by the counter, a glass of water in his hand, staring out the window at the city lights below. He'd changed into gray sweatpants and a plain black t-shirt, looking more like the boy she'd loved in high school than the polished CEO she'd been dealing with all day. He turned when he heard her, and for a moment they just looked at each other. Jennifer's instinct was to retreat, to avoid this conversation until they were both armed with professional armor and the safety of daylight. But something in his expression stopped her, a vulnerability she'd never seen in him before, not even when they were together. "Can we please talk?" His voice was soft, stripped of its usual authority. "About what?" She tried to sound dismissive to protect herself with indifference. "Jen, please don't do that. Don't call me that. Just Don't. The old nickname hurt too much, carried too many memories of whispered conversations and promises that had turned to ash. Jen, please look at me. He took a step toward her. Can we sit and talk? I don't want to sit with you. She turned back toward her room, desperate to escape before her carefully maintained composure shattered completely. Okay, please. Just stay and let me explain. He followed her, and she could hear the desperation creeping into his voice. Please, Jennifer, just give me 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. She should have kept walking, should have locked herself in the guest room and waited out the night. Instead, she found herself stopping in the doorway, her hand on the frame, torn between the need to run and the need to finally understand. Juwan took her hesitation as permission. Can I explain, please? She walked into her room and sat on the edge of the bed, arms crossed defensively. Juwan followed, keeping a respectful distance, but his eyes never left her face. You broke up with me over the phone, she said, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. And then you moved away. No closure, no explanation, nothing. I didn't even have time to heal because I didn't know why. I didn't know what I'd done wrong. I spent months trying to figure out how I'd failed. You, wondering what was so fundamentally flawed about me that you could just discard me like that. The words tumbled out, months and years of bottled pain flowing free. I replayed every conversation we'd ever had, every moment we'd spent together, looking for the clue I'd missed, looking for the moment you'd stopped loving me. And I never found it because you never gave me the chance to understand. You just left. Her voice broke on the last word, and she hated herself for it, hated showing him how deeply he'd wounded her. Juwan's face was anguished. Without asking permission, he moved closer, dropping to his knees in front of her, his hands covering hers where they gripped the edge of the bed. I know, he whispered. I know nothing I say can make the hurt go away. But can you just allow me to explain? Please. Jennifer wanted to pull away, to deny him the absolution he sought. But she'd waited 6 years for this conversation. She could wait 5 more minutes. Talk, she said. My father died. The words came out raw, stripped of any protective emotion. 3 days before I called you. Massive heart attack. He was there one morning and by afternoon he was gone. Jennifer's anger faltered, replaced by a flood of sympathy. Juwan, I'm so sorry. You couldn't have known. I didn't tell you. He looked down at their joined hands. My grandfather, my father's father, he'd been estranged from our family for years, some old disagreement with my dad that neither of them would ever talk about. But when my father died, my grandfather showed up to the funeral. First time I'd seen him in over a decade. Juwan's fingers tightened around hers, as if holding on to something solid in the memory. Turns out my grandfather is Min Jun Park. The Min Jun Park, CEO of Park Industries in China, worth billions, controls half the tech sector in Asia. My father had walked away from all of it when he married my mother, chose love over legacy, and my grandfather never forgave him. Jennifer was beginning to understand, pieces of the puzzle sliding into place. The day after the funeral, my grandfather told me I was now the heir, his only heir since my father was dead, and there were no other children. He gave me a choice. Come to China immediately, learn the business, take my rightful place in the family empire, or be cut off entirely. He'd make sure I had nothing, no inheritance, no family support, no connections. And he gave me 48 hours to decide. That's cruel, Jennifer whispered. That's my grandfather. Juwan's smile was bitter. I fought it. God, I fought so hard. I told him I had a life here, commitments, someone I loved. I told him he couldn't just dictate my future because of some family obligation I'd never asked for. We screamed at each other for hours. He paused, eyes distant with memory. But in the end, he held all the cards. My mother was devastated. By my father's death, barely functioning. The hospital bills were astronomical. We were drowning in debt I hadn't known existed. And my grandfather made it clear, come to China, or he'd ensure we lost everything. The house, my mother's health care, all of it. So you went, Jennifer said softly. So I went. But I was 18, Jennifer. 18 and angry and grieving and so stupidly proud. I thought. He shook his head. I thought if I made the break clean, if I just ended things quickly, it would hurt less. For both of us. I thought you'd move on faster, find someone who could actually be there for you, build a life without the shadow of me hanging over everything. That wasn't your choice to make. But Jennifer's anger had softened, tempered by understanding. I know that now. But at the time, I convinced myself I was doing the right thing. I thought a phone call was kinder than dragging it out, than making you wait for me when I had no idea when or if I'd ever come back. I thought. His voice cracked, and Jennifer saw tears in his eyes. I thought I was protecting you. From the mess my life had become, from my grandfather's machinations, from being tied to someone who couldn't promise you anything. I thought you deserved better than that uncertainty. Instead, you just left me with different uncertainty, Jennifer said quietly. The uncertainty of not knowing why I wasn't enough. God, Jen. He looked up at her and she saw genuine pain in his face. You were everything. You were the only thing I wanted to keep from my old life, but I was a coward. I was scared and grieving and overwhelmed, and I made the worst decision of my life. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. The apology hung between them, raw and honest. Jennifer felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She'd imagined this conversation 1,000 times over the years. Sometimes she was angry, sometimes cold, sometimes indifferent. She'd never imagined this. Both of them crying, both of them wounded, both of them still carrying the weight of that long-ago goodbye. You still should have told me, she whispered. We could have figured it out together. I know, you're right. I was wrong, and I can't change that. But Jen, I need you to know. There hasn't been a single day in the last 6 years when I haven't thought about you, when I haven't regretted that phone call, when I haven't wondered what we could have been if I'd made a different choice. Jennifer didn't know what to say to that, didn't know how to process the revelation that he'd been carrying the same pain she had, that the ending that had destroyed her had also broken something in him. They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of 6 years of unspoken words settling around them like snow. Finally, Juwan spoke again, his voice barely audible. Can you forgive me? Not right now, maybe not ever, but someday? Jennifer looked at him, really looked at him. Not the CEO, not the boy who'd broken her heart, but the whole complicated person in between. Flawed, human, carrying his own scars. I don't know, she said honestly, but I understand now, and that's more than I had before. Juwan nodded, accepting that as the best he could hope for. He started to stand, to give her space, but Jennifer's hand on his arm stopped him. Stay, she heard herself say, just for a little while. We don't have to talk. Just stay. So he did. They talked through the night, not about the past anymore, but about the years in between. Juwan told her about London, about learning to navigate his grandfather's cutthroat business world, about transforming from a grieving teenager into the CEO he'd become. The learning curve had been brutal. His grandfather believed in trial by fire, throwing him into negotiations and board meetings with no preparation, expecting him to either swim or drown. He wanted to break me, Juwan said, now sitting beside her on the bed, their shoulders barely touching. Wanted to mold me into a carbon copy of himself, ruthless, unfeeling, devoted only to the company. He didn't succeed, Jennifer observed. No, though it was close sometimes. Juwan's smile was rueful. The only thing that kept me human was remembering you, remembering what it felt like to care about something more than profit margins and stock prices. Jennifer told him about her own journey, finishing college while working 2 jobs, her first real position in marketing at a small startup that eventually folded, meeting Rex at her next job, the whirlwind romance that had felt like a second chance at happiness. He wasn't you, she admitted softly. I think I always knew that. but I was tired of being alone, tired of comparing everyone to a memory. I'm sorry, Ju-won said again. Stop apologizing. We've both moved on, built lives. Even as she said it, Jennifer wondered if it was true. Had either of them really moved on, or had they just been treading water, waiting? Tell me about Rex, Ju-won said, and there was something careful in his voice. How did you meet? Jennifer laughed, surprising herself. Are we really talking about my ex right now? I'm curious. Ju-won's tone was light, but his eyes held something intense. I just can't picture you two together. It's interesting. What's interesting is you being jealous after 6 years. I'm not jealous. You claim to be my boyfriend to a complete stranger. That's pretty jealous. That was strategic, Ju-won protested, but the corners of his mouth twitched upward. Jennifer found herself smiling back. And suddenly, the heaviness of their earlier conversation lifted slightly. This felt familiar. The gentle teasing, the easy back and forth that had once been the foundation of their relationship. Well then, she said, matching his playful tone. Let's talk about your love life. How many people have you dated after me? The question was meant to be light, but Ju-won's expression grew serious. None, Jennifer blinked. None? In 6 years? None that mattered. A few dates here and there that my grandfather arranged, trying to match me with daughters of business partners. Networking disguised as romance. I never let any of them get close. Why not? Ju-won turned to look at her fully, and Jennifer's breath caught at the intensity in his gaze. Because I believe you only get one great love in your life, one person who changes you fundamentally, who becomes part of who you are. His voice was quiet, certain, and I'd already had mine. The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning. Jennifer's heart was racing. She should pull away, maintain distance, protect herself from falling back into old patterns. But she couldn't move, couldn't look away from his eyes. Ju-won. He leaned closer, slowly, giving her every opportunity to stop him. Tell me to leave, and I will. Tell me you want me to forget the last 6 years. Forget us, and I'll never bring it up again. But if there's any part of you that still feels what I feel, if there's any chance... Jennifer kissed him. It wasn't planned, wasn't thought through. One moment they were talking, and the next her lips were on his, her hands in his hair, 6 years of longing and pain and unresolved feelings pouring into that single connection. Ju-won made a sound. Relief, desire, coming home, and pulled her closer, his arms wrapping around her as if he'd never let go again. The kiss deepened, turned desperate, both of them trying to communicate everything words couldn't express. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ju-won rested his forehead against hers. I've missed you, he whispered. Every single day I've missed you. I missed you too, Jennifer admitted, the truth settling in her chest like a weight lifting. Even when I hated you, I missed you. They kissed again, softer this time, savoring rather than devouring. And then again. And then Ju-won was pulling her down onto the bed, and Jennifer was letting him, was pulling him closer, was rediscovering the feel of his body against hers. They made love slowly, tenderly, with the reverence of two people who'd thought they'd lost each other forever. Every touch was an apology, every kiss a promise, every whispered word a piece of healing. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the dark, Jennifer's head on Ju-won's chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now we sleep, Ju-won murmured, pressing a kiss to her hair. And tomorrow we figure out the rest. Together. The return to Seoul brought an unexpected lightness. Something had shifted between them in Los Angeles, not just the physical intimacy, but a deeper understanding, a bridge rebuilt between past and present. They kept it quiet at first, professional at the office, careful not to let their colleagues see the lingering looks, the small smiles they shared across conference rooms. But after hours, they were inseparable. Ju-won took her to dinner at exclusive restaurants where the waitstaff knew him by name. They went shopping together, Ju-won insisting on buying her things she'd never have purchased for herself, designer dresses, expensive jewelry, shoes that cost more than her monthly car payment. "You don't have to do this," Jennifer protested after he'd handed his credit card to the clerk at a boutique in Beverly Hills, purchasing a sapphire necklace she'd admired for half a second. "I want to," Juwan said simply, fastening the necklace around her neck. "I have 6 years of gifts to make up for. Let me spoil you." It was overwhelming, but also intoxicating. Not the material things themselves, but the attention behind them, the clear message that he was thinking about. Her, that he wanted to give her the world. They fell into an easy rhythm. Stolen moments in Juwan's office when everyone else had gone home, long drives along the coast on weekends, quiet evenings at his penthouse where they'd cook together and talk about everything and nothing. Jennifer felt herself falling in love all over again. Or perhaps she'd never really stopped. 3 weeks into their undefined relationship, Jennifer arrived at work to find the break room buzzing with unusual energy. A group of her coworkers huddled around someone's phone, voices low and excited. "Apparently it's been kept very hush-hush," one woman was saying, "but the announcement is supposed to go public this week." "I heard she's from another tech company. Very strategic match," another added. "What are you all talking about?" Jennifer asked, pouring herself coffee. The group looked up, and something in their expressions made her stomach drop. "The CEO's engagement," one of our said, as if it should be obvious. "You didn't know?" The coffee cup trembled in Jennifer's hand. "What?" "Juwan Park. He's engaged. Has been for months, apparently. They're announcing it officially this week." The woman showed Jennifer her phone screen, where Highsights Global's official social media page displayed a carefully curated post. "Congratulations to our CEO, Juwan Park, on his engagement. We wish him and his fiancée all the happiness in the world. Hashtag Highsights Global, hashtag celebrating love." There was a photo, Juwan in a tuxedo at some formal event, a beautiful woman with dark hair and a designer gown on his arm, both of them smiling for the camera. Jennifer's world tilted. The coffee cup slipped from her numb fingers, shattering on the floor. "Oh my God, are you okay?" Someone grabbed her arm. "Be careful of the glass." "I'm fine." Jennifer's voice came from far away. I need to go." She walked away, ignoring the concerned calls behind her, ignoring the coffee spreading across the break room floor, ignoring everything except the need to get away, to get air, to understand how this was possible. He was engaged. Juwan was engaged. All those dinners, all those promises, all those nights wrapped in each other's arms, and he was engaged to someone else. She'd been the other woman. Again. Jennifer made it to her car before the tears came. Great gasping sobs that tore from her chest, the kind of crying that hurt physically, that left her ribs aching and her throat raw. She'd been such a fool. Such a stupid, naive fool. History was repeating itself, except this time it was worse because she should have known better. She should have protected herself, should have demanded clarity, should have questioned why Juwan never defined what they were, never made promises beyond the immediate moment. Just like Rex, Juwan had kept her as his secret. The difference was that Rex had simply been selfish and opportunistic. Juwan had orchestrated an elaborate seduction, had manipulated her from the very beginning, all while engaged to someone else. The manipulation was breathtaking in its scope. He hadn't just brought her to California, he'd crafted an entire narrative designed to make her fall in love with him again. The job, the apartment, the careful avoidance followed by the perfectly timed revelation, the trip to L.A. where he could play her hero against Rex, the vulnerable middle-of-the-night confession. It had all been a performance, and she'd fallen for it completely. Jennifer drove home in a daze, her phone buzzing constantly. Juwan's name appeared again and again on her screen, along with messages from coworkers who'd witnessed her breakdown in the break room. She ignored all of them. At home, she collapsed onto her couch and did something she'd thought she'd moved past. She Googled Juwan Park. There it was, splashed across multiple news sites and gossip. Pages, tech billionaire Juwan Park, Engaged to mystery woman, high sights. Global CEO confirms. Long-rumored engagement sources, close to Park reveal. Engagement planned for months. The articles were vague on details about the fiancée. Her name wasn't mentioned, just descriptions like socialite and connected to the tech industry. But the timeline was clear. The engagement had been in place for at least 3 months. 3 months. They'd been sleeping together for 3 weeks, and he'd been engaged the entire time. Jennifer's phone buzzed again. Another call from Juwan. Her finger hovered over the answer button, then moved to decline. What could he possibly say? What explanation could justify this? The buzzing stopped, then immediately started again. A text this time. Juwan. Please answer. Let me explain. Another text. Juwan. It's not what you think. And another. Juwan. Jen, please. Just talk to me. She blocked his number. The doorbell rang an hour later. Then again and again. Jennifer sat on her couch, unmoving, as Juwan rang and knocked and called her name through the door. Jennifer, please, open the door. Let me explain. This isn't... Please, just listen to me. Give me 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. His voice was desperate, nothing like the controlled CEO or the tender lover, but Jennifer had heard his performances before. She wouldn't be fooled again. The next day, flowers appeared at her door. Roses, dozens of them, with a card that read simply, I'm sorry. Let me explain. Jennifer threw them in the trash. More flowers came the next day, and the day after that. Gifts, too. Jewelry, books, her favorite chocolates. All of it went in the trash. A growing pile of expensive apologies that meant nothing. Juwan showed up at her door every evening, always with something new, always begging for just a chance to talk. Jennifer never answered. She'd lie in bed, listening to him. Plead through the door, hardening her heart against the pain in his voice. He'd made his choice. He'd chosen deception. Whatever they'd had, whatever she'd thought they had, was built on lies. On the 5th day of his siege, Jennifer made a decision. She couldn't keep working at High Sights Global, couldn't see him every day, couldn't navigate the knowing looks from co-workers who'd surely figured out by now that something had been going on between them. She needed a clean break. She stayed up late crafting her resignation letter, making it professional and brief. Dear Mr. Park, please accept this letter as my formal resignation from High Sights Global, effective immediately. Thank you for the opportunity to work with such a talented team. I wish the company continued success. Sincerely, Jennifer Hart. No explanation, no emotion, no acknowledgement of anything personal. Just clean professional distance. She printed it out, sealed it in an envelope, and drove. To the office at 6 a.m., early enough that the building would be nearly empty. She could leave it with his assistant and disappear before Juwan arrived. But when she walked into the office, Juwan was already there. He looked terrible. That was Jennifer's first thought when she saw him standing in the middle of the office, clearly waiting for her. His suit was rumpled, his hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes, suggesting he'd slept as poorly as she had. Good, a vindictive part of her thought. We need to talk. His voice was rough, strained. My office, now. It wasn't a request, and despite everything, despite her anger and hurt, Jennifer found herself following him, the resignation letter clutched in her hand. The moment his office door closed behind them, Juwan turned to her with an expression so devastated it almost broke through her defenses. Almost. Did I do something wrong? The question came out quiet, broken. Jennifer laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. Are you seriously asking me that? Jen? No, don't call me that. She held up the envelope. I came here to drop this off. Consider this my resignation. I'll be out by the end of the day. You're leaving? Juwan looked stricken. Why? Why? Jennifer's voice rose. You're engaged, Juwan. You're engaged, and you didn't think that was something I should know before we... She couldn't even say it. How could you do this to me? How could you make me the other woman? It's not like that. Then what is it like? Explain to me how sleeping with me while engaged to someone else isn't exactly what it looks like. Juwan ran both hands through his hair, a gesture of pure frustration. If you would just listen. I'm done listening to you. Tears were streaming down her face now, all her carefully constructed composure crumbling. You lied to me. You manipulated me. You brought me here under false pretenses. You orchestrated everything to make me fall in love with you again, all while you were engaged to someone else. How am I supposed to trust anything you say? Because I love you. The words burst from him like a dam breaking. Because everything between us was real. Because the engagement is fake. Because, of course it is, Jennifer said bitterly. How convenient. It's the truth. Juwon moved toward her, and Jennifer saw something she'd never seen before. Juwon Park completely losing his composure, his mask shattering. Jennifer, please, just look at me. Really look at me. Despite herself, she did. The engagement is a publicity stunt, he said, speaking quickly as if afraid she'd run before he could finish. My grandfather demanded it. There were rumors, stupid, baseless rumors, that I was gay because I'd never been seen with anyone romantically. It was affecting business relationships, causing problems with investors who care about that kind of antiquated nonsense. That's ridiculous. I know it's ridiculous. But my grandfather doesn't care about ridiculous. He cares about the company's image. So he arranged an engagement. S.E.O. Yeon, the woman in the photos, she's the daughter of a business partner. She's also a friend, someone I trust, and she's in a relationship with her girlfriend of 5 years. They can't come out publicly yet because her family is deeply religious and conservative. So we made a deal. Juwon was talking faster now, desperate to make her understand. We pretend to be engaged for a year, long enough to kill the rumors and satisfy our respective families. It's purely business, a contract. There's no romance, no relationship, nothing real about it except the press releases. I should have told you, God, I should have told you the second we got back from L.A., but I was scared you'd run, that you'd think it was too complicated, too messy. I thought I had time to figure out how to end it early, to get out of the arrangement before it became a problem for us. Jennifer wanted to believe him, desperately wanted to believe that this was all a misunderstanding, that he hadn't deliberately deceived her. But trust was a fragile thing, and hers had been shattered too many times. How am I supposed to know that's true? She asked quietly. Juwon was already moving, pulling open a drawer in his desk. He extracted something small, a velvet box that made Jennifer's heart stutter. Because I bought this. He opened the box, revealing a ring, not ostentatious or flashy, but perfect. A simple platinum band with a single emerald surrounded by small diamonds. I bought this the day after we spent the night together in L.A. Before the convention, before we even talked things through, I went to a jewelry store and bought this. He crossed the room, dropping to his knees in front of her, holding the ring box like an offering. I've known you were the one since we were 16 years old, Jen. I've known it every day for the last 6 years, even when I was too proud and stupid to do anything about it. When I saw you in that conference room, when I realized I had a second chance at the only thing I've ever really wanted, I swore I wouldn't waste it. Tears were streaming down his face now, matching hers. I know it's early. I know we've only been back in each other's lives for a few weeks. But Jen, I've loved you for a decade. I never stopped, not for a single day. And I don't know how to prove that to you except to say, take this. Keep it. Not as an engagement, not as a promise of marriage right now, but as my promise to you that I will never, ever hurt you again. Jennifer stared at the ring, her mind spinning. The engagement with Seo Yeon is over, Juwon continued. I'll announce it tomorrow, tonight, right now if you want me to. I'll call my grandfather and tell him to go to hell. I'll hold a press conference and tell the world I'm in love with you. Whatever you need, whatever it takes for you to believe me, I'll do it. Juwon. Her voice broke on his name. I love you, Jennifer. I'm in love with you. I have been since I was 17 years old, and I will be until the day I die. You're it for me. The only one. And if you walk away now, I'll understand. I'll accept it. But I need you to know that you're taking my heart with you. Because it's been yours all along. The resignation letter slipped from Jennifer's fingers, falling to the floor forgotten. She looked at Ju-won, really looked at him, at the desperation in his eyes, the tears on his cheeks, the way his hands trembled slightly as he held the ring box. This wasn't a performance. This wasn't manipulation. This was a man completely, terrifyingly vulnerable, offering her everything. "I love you too," she whispered. The relief that washed over Ju-won's face was profound. "You do?" "I do. God help me, I do. But Ju-won, can't, I can't go through this again. I can't survive another heartbreak." "Then I won't break your heart." He said it like a vow, with the weight of absolute certainty. "I promise you, Jen. I promise on everything I have, everything I am. I will never hurt you again." Jennifer's hands moved almost of their own accord, cupping his face, thumbs brushing away his tears. "Prove it," she said. "End the fake engagement. Be honest with me about everything, even the hard things. Don't make decisions for me or manipulate situations because you think you know best. Trust me to handle the truth." "I will. I swear I will." Ju-won turned his head, pressing a kiss to her palm. "Anything else?" "Just," she took a shaky breath, "don't let me go again." Ju-won stood, pulling her into his arms, and Jennifer melted into him, all her defenses crumbling. "Never," he murmured into her hair. "Never again. You're stuck with me now." They held each other for a long time, both crying, both healing, both finally, letting themselves believe this could work. When they eventually pulled apart, Ju-won placed the ring in Jennifer's palm, closing her fingers around it. "Keep this," he said. "When you're ready, when we're ready, I'll ask you properly. But for now, just know it's yours. You're mine and I'm yours, and nothing is going to change that again." Jennifer looked at the ring, feeling its weight, its promise. "What do we do about the resignation letter?" She gestured to where it had fallen on the floor. Ju-won picked it up, walked to the paper shredder beside his desk, and fed it through without a moment's hesitation. "What letter?" He gave her a small smile. "Now, what do you say we get out of here? I owe you about 6 years' worth of proper dates." Jennifer laughed, the sound watery but genuine. "Just 6 years? Okay, a lifetime's worth, starting today." He stood before cameras and reporters, his expression serious but certain, and announced that the engagement with Seo-yeon had been ended by mutual agreement. He thanked her for her understanding and wished her well in her future endeavors. What he didn't mention was that Seo-yeon had been the one to push him to end it early after Jennifer had met her and they'd bonded over coffee and mutual exasperation with Ju-won's tendency toward dramatic gestures. "Tell her the truth and stop being an idiot," Seo-yeon had said, grinning. "I can come out to my family when I'm ready. Don't use me as an excuse to hide what you really want." 6 months after that, Ju-won proposed for real. He did it simply, without fanfare, on a quiet evening at the beach where they'd had their first date all those years ago. No cameras, no audience, just the two of them and the sunset, and the question he'd been waiting to ask since he bought the ring. Jennifer said yes before he'd even finished asking. They married in the spring, a small ceremony, with close friends and family. Ju-won's grandfather attended, looking vaguely disapproving, but saying nothing. He'd learned by now that his grandson would choose love over business expectations every single time. Jennifer wore a dress that made her feel like a princess, and when Ju-won saw her walking down the aisle, tears streaming down his face, she knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. Sometimes love got a second chance. Sometimes broken hearts could heal stronger than before. Sometimes the boy who broke your heart could become the man who put it back together. And sometimes, just sometimes, happy endings were real.